Lee set me up again because, you know, there's two things that you never do, ever in politics and in show business, ever. You never follow a child, you never follow a cute little dog, and you never follow a pastor that can preach. So he has done it to me again, just like I told him. I said, Lee, 4 years ago, you're supposed to be mayor, and you're supposed to be mayor now. We talk about this all the time. And he has this big, gleeful, joyful, happy smile that he's not mayor. And I'm just like, oh man, come on, you're killing me. I do want to introduce a couple of people. We have three very esteemed people with us that I want to introduce that I'm very, very glad that came to join us for the Juneteenth celebration. And these two people are amazing. They're rock stars. One is newly elected this past November. The other one was elected 2 years ago. They're part of the leadership that is doing an amazing job in Roswell. And I would like to acknowledge here in the center tent, Councilmember Christine Hall and Councilmember Lee Hills. They're amazing. Please give them a round of applause. You know, and Lee, thanks. I think Lee told me I had 3 minutes, so I'm almost done. I'm lying. So, one of the things that when you come into a new job and you're a new manager or a new boss or a new business person, you have kind of a change agent management perspective. And a lot of times that means you turn things over and you turn people over and you get in there and you evaluate and you usually don't know what you got until you get in. But it's safe to say that often when you're in a change agent organization, there's usually some people that are going to go. And I got to tell you that one of the most amazing things about becoming mayor this past year was the incredible competency, the incredible commitment of the staff of the city of Roswell. And it's led by a brand new city administrator who literally started the day after our election. And this man has become an incredible partner to myself and to the rest of the city council, and is doing an incredible job leading the staff of the city of Roswell. I'd like to introduce Mr. Randy Knighton, city administrator for Roswell. Randy, please say hi to everybody. He doesn't get much credit. He has a gigantic ego, so that applause probably wasn't big enough, just FYI. So let me say happy Father's Day, good afternoon, and happy 19th happy Juneteenth to each of you. By the way, I hate prepared speeches. Most of my speeches are impromptu, they're extemporaneous, but I prepared a speech today because I thought this was such an important event. And I'd like to begin my words to you with something a speaker should never do, and that is to give his audience some homework. I'm going to ask each of you to go home and look up and read about a man named Vernon Baker. Vernon Baker. We stand here today on the shoulders of men and women like Vernon Baker. Most of those names are forgotten to history. You will never hear of most of the giants that have put us here today, and their names are known only to God. But men and women like Vernon Baker are the ones that got us here. They were brave, courageous, virtuous, and believed in the American ideal despite all the times that we did not live up to our ideals. I'd also like to share with you three names that are for me personally important in my journey. The first two are Jim and Judy Wilson. Jim Wilson is my late father, and Judy is my mom. What they provided for me is what I wish for every American child: a home, a place where the issue of race, religion, sex, political party, money, and every other way that we like to pigeonhole one another was never introduced as a pejorative. In other words, they let me meet and engage with every human being on my own terms, with no predisposition of what that other human being might be like based on some preconceived notion that might have been taught to me. So Jim and Judy Wilson never taught me anything about bias or prejudice. And I cannot tell you how much freedom that has afforded me in the course of human events. The third person I'd like to recognize is Stacy Wilson, my wife of 31 years in just 3 days on June 22nd. That's right, grow it up. Thank you. That's been a lot of work on my part, I promise you. She's had it easy. Very simply, I fell in love with Stacy for a number of reasons. But one very important reason was her absolute rejection of any kind of elitism and or superior feelings at any level with any other human being. Her love of others and acceptance of others as her complete equal is a basis of true human action that I wish all of us would embrace. Oh, how we would be a better people. You know, much like in God's creation, there were and are two great ironies struggling. One is the principle of freedom and free will. The second is the principle of original sin. Both principles at odds with one another and fighting for reconciliation. And so it is with us as Americans. We too share these principles of freedom and original sin, struggling for reconciliation. On July 4th, 1776, we formally began as a country with the Declaration of Independence. We declared that people have guaranteed or inalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We declared that individuals have a duty to defend these rights for themselves and others. We acknowledged that freedom comes from God, and that the Declaration of Independence was our expression of freedom as a country. It's no irony that the first person to spill blood for the American cause was a black and brown man named Crispus Attucks on March 5th, 1770. And then we said, if we're to survive together as a country, we must put that freedom into law that is practical for this land. But we were unable to remove our original sin. And so on June 21st, 1788, we ratified the Constitution of the United States. We instituted the belief in limited government, that our government would have checks and balances, separations of powers, popular sovereignty, federalism, and representative government. The Constitution became the basis of fundamental law for our country. And then we began to address our original sin and institutional evil. And so on January 1st, 1863, President Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, ordering the abolition of slavery, declaring all persons held as slaves within the rebellious states are and henceforth shall be free. It was the beginning of the absolute commitment of the Union to end slavery. But the end of slavery was not real yet for most who were suffering. Thus, on June 19th, 1865, in Galveston, Texas, Union General Gordon Granger, by General Order Number 3, proclaimed freedom for enslaved people in Texas. But the real meaning was the slaves were finally free. The physical shackles of slavery were over, and one man could no longer own another man in America. Thus today, we celebrate this great day as an American holiday called Juneteenth. I would be remiss if I did not mention, I would be remiss to you if I did not mention that 3 years later, on July 9th, 1868, the 14th Amendment was ratified. And in Section 2 of the 14th Amendment, the 3/5 clause was finally eliminated from the Constitution, and citizenship was granted to all persons born or naturalized in the United States. I could go on and on from 1868 until now on all of the legislative and judicial decisions that have been made to reverse the tide of our original sin. But I would suggest a radical ideal to you, that despite the popular narrative, the American people, not just through legislative and judicial decisions, but by their aggregate and individual virtue and struggle, have fought to change our original sin. I also recognize that great evil has been done again and again by not only groups of American citizens, but by institutionalized behavior that has greatly hurt our black and brown brothers and sisters in ways that we can never repeat again. Just like in God's creation, we have struggled with our freedom. Yet, you and I together have created the single most dynamic and successful nation state in the history of mankind. At the same time, we've struggled with our original sin and have never fully met the intent of the ideals we were founded on. No less than the great founder Benjamin Franklin, before he died, desperately tried to find solutions to the issue of slavery and how it was unreconcilable to our beliefs before he passed away. Yet even he could not get it done. No less than Alex de Tocqueville, writing in Democracy in America in 1831, did not know how we would ever find a solution to the issue of slavery and the peaceful existence of black, brown, and white people in the United States without tearing us apart and at the very least a civil war. But somehow, my friends, you and I are here together on June 19th, 2022, celebrating Juneteenth. We celebrate it together. We recognize the importance of this date, not just to black people, but to all people. To quote the great civil rights activist from Mississippi, I hope you know her, Fannie Lou Hamer, nobody's free until everybody's free. Well, my friends, we are here on the shoulders of many a great man or woman who did the right thing at a great cost to themselves, yet they did it. They did it so you and I can be here today, and they'll ask you and I what we will do going forward. They did it because American exceptionalism is not about America winning, or that we are inherently better suited for our freedom, capitalism, and Republican form of government. American exceptionalism is about ideals. The ideal that we are all free. The ideal that each man, woman, and child has the opportunity and God-given right to search for his or her own destiny, his or her own success and failures, to carve out one's own path as bestowed by God. And that is left up to the individual. That is what freedom is. I will close with you by sharing who Vernon Baker is. It's actually First Lieutenant Vernon Baker. First Lieutenant Vernon Baker was one of 7 African Americans to receive the Medal of Honor in World War II. Lieutenant Vernon Baker did not receive the Medal of Honor until January 12, 1997, just 25 years ago, and 42 years after it should have been given. Vernon Baker was the only living recipient of the 7 African American World War II Medal of Honor honorees. In other words, we waited too late to do the right thing by 6 of those men. So I share this with you, that I believe in the course of human history, yes, we have come a remarkable way in the past 150 years since June 19th, 1865. But the real question is, what will you and I get done in the next 5 years, the next 10 years, the next 15 years? You see, I believe that as a people, a time will come when we will not only honor the words of Dr. Martin Luther King, but we will live out the words of Dr. Martin Luther King. And we will honor the actions of my parents, Jim and Judy Wilson. When the only criteria is that we look at the person in front of us, judge them only based on the content of their character. I look forward to the day when we as a people make the judgment of one another solely based on one another's character as a universal truth for our country. And I believe that when they celebrate Juneteenth 157 years from now, that this will be a long established truth and make speeches like this an oddity. May God bless each of you. May God bless us as a people. May God bless Roswell. May God bless America. Happy Juneteenth, my friends.